Okay, welcome everyone. We have a great guest with us today. Imagine being an Olympic USA soccer player and then getting into the business world, not just, starting anywhere, but you're a VP at one of the top 5 lenders in all of the USA. This is who we're speaking to today, Brian Covey. So you right now have a book out, Conversations with Covey, and in here, you talk about, really the theme is moving from adversity to being, a winner, a high achiever. And so we wanted to break this down because this is what standalone is really all about. It is about taking charge of your life. And I love that you also label yourself as a disruptor. And this is how I wanted to kind of kick this off, because it's not often that people say I am a disruptor. But this is a very catchy thing right now, Brian. Everyone wants, it's like we live in an era of massive disruption. COVID brought great disruption to all of us. But I wanted to ask you today, why is it so important that people understand before you want to disrupt an industry, the disruption really starts with ourself.
Yeah.
Could you tie that in and just help the audience to understand a lot of times when we're achieving adversity in our life, it is us that has to be disrupted before we can do great things like disrupt an industry.
Yeah. And I love that. Great intro to a cool topic right now. And thanks for having me on. This is always fun to share, talk about. I think everybody in 2020, whether they like it or not, our worlds got flipped upside down. We all got disrupted. And many times change happens that way, where we didn't actually initiate it, because change is hard for most people. They don't want to go one direction when they're in their comfort zone and all that. And as I look back in my life, like I've always kind of been a little bit of not necessarily an outcast, but a disruptor in the sense of playing sports and just the way I went about my life. And, even through college and not going and doing all the partying, I was very focused on, what I wanted to do. I didn't fit the traditional mold in the box of what most people would have said would be success. And I've always just kind of worked with that chip on my shoulder and said, you know what, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to pave my own trail. And some of the old traditional ways, there's some things that we can learn from that. But I think what is most enticing to me and what I love is people that can find and blaze their own trail. And so I have found that in my own world of, for example, getting on video before many people got on video, doing leadership styles the way we did it. We threw away the suits and the ties long before it was really popular for people to do that, and just got very comfortable. And I look at, for many years, people would not put their family first. And quite often in our industry, real estate, mortgage, and all that, I think that was something that really bothered me, that people would just grind and grind and grind. They talk about the 24/7 grind. And the reality is back at home, everything's falling apart. And I don't view that as success. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to do something different. We're going to create a team. We're going to create a culture and environment. And I'm going to walk the walk, which is you're going to put your family first. My faith is very important to me. And I'm going to lead with those in the front. And as a byproduct, we're also going to be very successful and we're going to win at business. And I think those two can go together. And people talk about there can be no balance. There could be no balance. Well, here's something I'll throw out is if you look up the definition of balance in dictionary, it's actually not two equally weighted objects or things. It can be out of proportion, right? So I might be focused on business in this hour. Guess what? Next hour, I'm gonna be focused on something that is more family oriented or my health in the morning. And so I think that's where people have just gotten a little bit behind. And so I want to create this disruption because I think you can do it all. I really do.
Yeah, I think this is great that you're mentioning this stuff, because in terms of climbing to those ultimate heights in business. And we want to have like the best business, the best family, the best personal life, the best fitness for ourselves, financially free. But at the same time, it is that mindset from within. So when you came into the business world, you're coming from a sports background, and especially for me in my business, what I find with people is that it really is, do you have a winning mindset? Do you want to win in all the areas of your life? It doesn't mean that you are winning in all the areas of your life right now, but you have this want, you have this desire. How do you help people to understand that when you say family first, I think this is it's something I hear a lot today, but a lot of times people are coming with their family in a mess. And then they're coming into a new business. And then they're like, what in the world do I do? What do I put first? And just balancing that all out. So what words of wisdom would you share for someone who's in kind of a messy situation right now, and they have to be able to navigate to clean it all up?
Yeah, what I would say, your ability to have strong relationships inside your own family and also in business are correlated. They just are. Like, we want to separate these things and we want to make it all cliche. Like, okay, I can have this wonderful business, but I can't have this. I really don't. I don't find that to be true in my own life. And the people that I found that are very successful realize that they're both really hard.
Mm-hmm.
They just are. So let's just face the facts that it is hard. But what I've found, let's go back to, Sabrina, you're talking about disrupting your own life. Until you have clarity of who you're becoming and who you want to be, you're not going to show up as the best husband, the best wife, dad, all these things in life. You need to become that person. And so that when you're giving into a relationship and you're part of a relationship, you're giving of your best. And I think a lot of times what I've found is people do not want to put in the work. So then they wonder why relationships are out of balance. They're out of sorts and they're arguing with a lot of people. They're frustrated with things. And I'll pick up on something you said, which was, I think it is okay to know that you're winning in some areas of your life and you may not be where you want to be in others, but you haven't quit and you have
Yeah.
a clear definition of what success looks like. Like, I know in my world, I know exactly what success looks like for us. And I'm always moving that forward when we achieve it. Okay, now what's next? My wife will say this. She'll tell you, she's like, when is it just good enough? And I said, I have this dichotomy of it is good enough. I'm extremely grateful because we've come from like losing it all in the market crash of '07 to having some of our best years of our life in the last few years. And I have appreciation for that. But I'm also thinking about, okay, this is a legacy play for our family, for the team that I get to support at Loan Depot and the people that I'm around. If I don't think bigger, who is? Nobody's going to come do it for me. Nobody's going to come to Sabrina or Brian and go, hey, you should really be thinking bigger and go do all these things. No, you've got to go do it yourself until you're willing to take ownership of that. I don't think these areas in our lives or relationships actually improve until we take ownership of it. And a book I read, Extreme Ownership, I don't know if you've read it.
Yes.
Highly recommend. It was a game changer. I've gone back and read it several times, shared it with our team, and it started to help me frame up the things of it's my fault, right? Like there are areas of my life that I need to take ownership on. And when you start framing your life and going, okay, what did I do in that situation to cause this to happen versus, man, that person, they always do this, they always do that. You fall into the blame game and this resonates. I would encourage you to read that book. It will shift your perspective and your mindset to what did I do? What do I need to work on? Right? Like for me, great example, I share this is I'm highly competitive. So I want to win at everything. And so if I get triggered by something that I'm not winning or something's not going, then does frustration or anger set in? Do I let that trigger in my life? And then do I take that out on the people that I care about? You recognize those triggers, you can change quickly, go the other direction. And that was one for me is you'll resonate with that. It's like, I'm highly competitive in everything. So it's only one of those to think that if I'm not winning or things aren't going well, I'm going to be frustrated. Well, how do you balance those? How do you stay positive and focused? Well, you have big goals, you're putting in the work and you know where you're going. I think that's where a lot of people could just shift a little bit and recognize I'm putting in the work today for a year, 5 years down the road, because there will at some point we'll reap what we sow. And today, maybe I'm just planting.
Yes, this is really powerful in terms of it brings up this other topic I want to discuss with you, leadership, because it's such an important thing in the business world. And I love that you tie sports and business together. We're always looking to dominate in our business, and it's almost impossible to have a meeting and not talk and make sports references because that's just how it is, and I love that you brought up extreme ownership because I love, war and the military because it's about executing on tasks and making sure that you're on mission. And all these things tie in so nicely. And you mentioned that if a leader is there and they don't have a vision, the people feel it because they're misguided. And especially today, Brian, people are it's so easy to get distracted. I find like one of the most important things for me to lead and to guide our team is just to make sure that everyone is clear of distractions. How are you navigating through this as a leader in your business, in your life too? I say this all the time. People have to lead their families as well as their business if they want to have true success, right? Instead of it just being lopsided. How do you navigate through the distractions and the different voices that people are hearing that could essentially be bad influences on them? How do you do that as a leader?
There's lots to unpack there. I think where I would start with this is our pastor said it, and I can't remember who gets credit. It might have been John Maxwell or Stephen Covey, but I remember they said, keep the main thing the main thing. And our pastor kind of reframed that. And he said, a lot of times we get stuck and we start majoring in the minors and we
Mhm.
start spending time in things that don't matter. When he's like, if you majored in the majored, meaning when you put those big rocks in, if you remember back to that whole analogy and you're putting your big rocks in first, like what are your big rocks? And are you majoring in those? Or are you spending time in other areas that are true distractions? And we know what those are, right? And that happened to a lot of people in 2020 when we were forced to work from home. Our kids are working, doing school from home, and we start to realize, like, do we have a routine? Are we adaptable in those moments? I think that's one of the best skills, quite honestly, in today's world is, are you adaptable? Because what will happen is if you can adapt to these things, then your habits can change over time when your business evolves, when you evolve, when your kids evolve. Because look, I mean, here's the reality. Like my oldest is 14. It's very different today than when she was 4, right? Let's
Mhm.
just call it what is it. Now we have 3 kids versus starting with 1, then 2, now 3. And if you can learn in your life how to adapt to situations quickly and recognize what are the main things and have clarity on where you're going, I think you will start to eliminate distractions in your life. One of the things that my wife and I do, Sunday planning. We go through the week, we look at our schedules, and I am planning out not only making sure meetings that are in my business calendar, but also my personal calendar. What are they? Are there any I need to cancel? Are there any that they have an hour but could be 30 minutes? Are there any that are not on there that I say, you know what, this weekend I'm thinking about this person in my life. I need to schedule time with them. Do I need to put together a sales meeting with my team to talk about something that shifted? That's where the proactive leader in all of us, we need to take ownership of. And if you start to schedule out things, I have realized you have such a higher degree of success because if it's on your calendar, it's most likely going to happen, right?
Mhm.
And you stick to it. But a lot of people I have heard when I originally start there, you can look at their calendar and you can look at people's checkbooks and you can find out what are your real priorities in your life. So if you're struggling with that and you say, hey, I don't even know what my priorities are, great. A great place to start is go back and look through your phone, right? Because we all use our smartphones for a lot of different things. Look and see where you spent your time last month. Just keep it last month. Be very real about doing that analysis and see what's there. Also, take a look back at your last month's bank statement. Where did you spend most of your money, right? And start to really analyze or put analysis on where do I want to be, right? Am I saving enough money? Am I investing enough money? Am I spending my time where I need to? I think those are the honest conversations we have with ourselves. And what I have learned is I can be my hardest critic, but I can also let myself be in a comfort zone. So where's that tension and almost like that dichotomy of I need to schedule things that need to get done, but I also need to make sure, I believe, to schedule downtime. And so one thing I've done intentionally is on Friday afternoons at 12 o'clock, I have blocked out my calendar. I don't do any meetings that afternoon because it's me looking back at the week. How did I do? Are there any urgent matters I need to follow up on? What's my week look like next week? What am I scheduling? What are the priorities? There needs to be time in our lives where we slow down, pause for a minute, look at the work we're doing, right? Make sure we're on course instead of it'd be almost like you're in a ship and you're going a direction, you're not using a map at all. And you're just like, man, I hope I get there. It's hard.
Yes. And you talk about the things that are you're working on the mastery of, like the art of a growth mindset, the art of winning, and the art of staying fit. And I love that you use the word art because I actually have a science background. And when I came into business, I applied a lot of what I know in science to business, and it helped me so much. But a lot of people don't know this about me. I'm also really good at art. And so in business, what I always share with people, it's not always scientific. There's like an art to this, right? Could
Yes.
you share with the audience the art of winning and what it means for us to be the kind of people that really understand how to work with people, how to build those relationships, not always working on the things that can be measured, because this is the data number world that we live in. But sometimes I watch people when they ask me for help and they're just spitting out these numbers, and I'm like, that might be part of the problem. So could you talk about this and elaborate on what does it mean to have like an art of winning?
Yeah. So I'll give you some background. So I have an interesting background of I played bass and a little bit of piano before, but I was mainly a bass player and played with a lot of Christian artists and played at our church and all this stuff. And so I have this creative side that is a little bit unique because then you pair that up with the athlete in me. And so I use that intentionally because I do think there is an art. And when I look at the best teams that I was on in sports and now in business, there was an art and there was a way in which the teams that won championships and the teams like that we're a part of now and we're building, yes, you can measure the stats and the stats will back up some of the things that are there. But there are some of those feelings that we measure things on, and we're making sure that we're moving people not only physically but emotionally. And this is where I think a lot of leaders could tap into. When 2020 happened, no longer did we have the ability to get in front of people and spend FaceTime, which was in the past, that was how you did one-on-ones. That's how you met with your team. You got in front of everybody. Well, that quickly had a separation. If you were not on social media and you weren't comfortable on social media, how in the world are you going to connect up with your team virtually? Well, I think it separated leaders forever, because what I have found is the leaders, and I would put myself in that camp, is I put myself in a very vulnerable spot. I'm sharing a lot of things about my family, a lot of things about what I'm doing, a lot of my routines. And I just got open, honest about stuff. Some people didn't like what I said. That's okay. But it was a way for me to connect up with the team and for them to realize that I'm human. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I've got my kids going around doing all this stuff. Like, I'm living in that same world you are. And along the way, I think that's how you lead your team, is not just in the business aspects. That's important. We've got to have the skills and the fundamentals. We talk about blocking and tackling in the business. But what about when somebody goes home? Like, wouldn't it be sad if somebody went home and like they're winning at your team at work and they go home to an area that is dysfunctional and broken? Like, why shouldn't we be talking about these things and sharing them? And so I just open up and was very vulnerable about that and what we're doing. And I tell people is we don't have it all figured out. Guess what? Almost 20 years of being married, my wife and I would tell you, we don't have it all figured out. But you know what? We're committed to getting better and improving and committed to each other. And we're fiercely loyal. And I think that is where the art of this comes into play, because you have to recognize an opportunity, be willing to put yourself out there and get creative with it. Like, do something that is going to connect yourself emotionally with your team. So to your point, I could share stats all day. We are winning on every metric you look at. Great. That's not going to move majority of our team. They're not going to feel that in their heart. So how do you move people? I think that's the art of this.
Wow, this is really powerful. When you talk about, you said a magic word there, commitment, because I was just talking to my team this morning and we were talking about the highs and lows of the business. And what is so important is that if you're just committed, and it's like a marriage too, if there's that baseline commitment there, you can go through the highs and the lows. But if that commitment isn't there, it just gets more scary. When you're going through a low, you're like, what's going to happen now? Same thing in business. If you sign your name on a contract, same thing in the mortgage industry. Like, when you sign your name and your name holds weight and there's commitment backing it up, you find a way to go through the lows instead of it being like, okay, bankrupt this relationship, bankrupt this, go on to something new. And it's unfortunate because I feel like a lot of people, when that commitment is lost, it travels into other areas. So I love that you said that magical word. You talk about being kind, and I really love that you said this, because being in business, it's a very masculine space. I say this, I'm very proud to say this. I'm very proud to be, to work with very strong men. And I love that. I don't think that's negative. I think that's an incredible positive. But when you say being kind, it's almost like what I had to do was I had to toughen up myself. But I've always said this, Brian, I said, don't mistake, that whole saying of don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I have a very kind heart, but I don't want to be the nice guy. I don't want to be the nice guy. When you say be kind, what do you mean? And how can this help us? But then how do we also be a warrior? How do we also have intensity? How do we also have drive? How do we have ambition? How do we have that like deep hunger inside of us? And we're not afraid. We're unapologetic about it. We're still kind. This is something I'm constantly working on, because I don't want to be a nasty negative, but at the same time, I know the arena that I'm playing in, and I can't go in there. Everyone's my friend, because they're not.
Yeah. I think this is what most people struggle with. I've struggled most of my career with it, because you're right. You want to be friends with people, but then you have this business relationship. And I started, back in 2001, and the environment culturally, I was in a corporate culture, like huge company. And it was very much, you climbed the ladder. You climbed over anybody you had to, you did whatever you had to do to get there, ethically and within reason, but you basically were trying to climb a ladder. And that almost puts you in a frame of, I'm going to beat out other people. So I have to win and you have to lose.
Mhm.
And I started to realize through that, like, it didn't resonate with me, like something about that. And it's back to the disruptor piece of, I didn't believe that was true. I started to test that in my own life. And I saw that, you know what, by me showing up and giving my best and winning doesn't mean that you can't show up and give your best and you can win too. And the best teams win. And in any arena right now, the best teams are going to win. And I think that's where people, they try to go individually at this and they don't realize that people have talked about emotional intelligence, and I'll kind of unpack it because it'll go into this. I think that's where a lot of people struggle is, when do I need to be someone that is slightly more demanding, that is holding the line of expectations? And then what about the flip side? Like, when do I need to be compassionate and kind in those things? I think you need to be both, because the reality is, you'll ask people in my life, like when I walk on a soccer field or I go into the gym or in certain meetings and settings, they know, like, I mean business. Like, I am not messing around. We're going to accomplish the goal, and I need everybody on their A game. And there's no room for anyone not being all in on this. But they also know, look, when we're not there, we're going to figure out together, collaboratively, and with an intensity, but also with a focus of, I recognize no one's perfect, but that's okay. Like, what are we going to do to fix it? Like, we can't sit around and mope about it. And I think that's where people get run over at times, is you have to know when to flex which one. And you have to know from conversation to conversation. We've got, I'll say right now, close to 20 leaders that report through and I'm in care of, and they've got teams themselves. Each one of them, they are very different. One may call this morning and they need me to be very compassionate and kind with them. Someone may call me this afternoon and they need me to hold them accountable, because what they said they were going to do and what they're doing are not in alignment. So for anyone listening, I would say, number one, you have to lead yourself. Because if your team sees you lead that way, our team knows, like, I have an intensity, but I also have a side of me that I truly care about them and their best interests. It is not just a number. They are not just somebody like holding a seat. Like most of what I experienced growing up early in corporate, which was like, there were seats to be filled. This is about the individual. And we have always said, we want to grow a team that we could all grow together, that we could grow this, that no one ever had to leave our team. They could get promoted within our team for more responsibility. Maybe if they were after, a bigger title, maybe they wanted to make more money, all those things. How do we grow it together? We use a phrase quite often, and it's collaboration over competition. And I think what we have really designed in our culture that's unique and how we're disrupting things is, I am willing to ask people on my team about what their input is about a situation. Like, I'll even use them right now. I'll use them as a sounding board, and I'll leverage their opinion about new hires. New leaders don't enter our team without talking to other leaders, because we're protecting the culture. No one can join our team without going through that test. And that has really protected us. And what will happen is people self-select out. It's happened to us recently where people realize, I don't want to be part of this. It's about their ego. It's about them. And that is not who we are. And so I don't think at times you have to go so far to the extremes. Like, I'm not so nice that, oh, everything's just, rose-colored glasses and all that stuff. No, but I'm also not such a jerk on the other side that people aren't like, man, what's wrong with that guy? Because who wants to be around that leader? Right. So I think you've got to find that emotional intelligence within all of us to realize, which muscle do I need to be flexing right now? Right. And how do I put those together? That's the sweet spot for leaders to figure out, and to know when to be intense and when to just sit back and listen and support your team.
Yes, this is especially in high performance cultures, like when you're operating at a high performing level, what a lot of people don't understand is that there's not that many peaks and valleys and fluctuations. High performers, what separates them from average is that they maintain pretty high and pretty calm. And, it doesn't mean that they don't have extreme ambition and drive, but when you look at an average person, there's like high highs and low lows. And then it doesn't end up being at the level of a high performer. So I love that you mentioned this. You talk about culture. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, because I think never before have you been more exposed than right now. And, what I really have always known is that It's not what you say your culture is, it's what your customers say your culture is. That's really what it is. How do you and what do you do to make sure that you build a culture in your organization that allows for there to be high performance and allows people to just push the limits, not be afraid to make errors, but then also be aware that they can't make too many errors? That's not good for business also. How do you create that? What would you say is, something that's really important for businesses today to understand about culture?
So it starts with who you attract. I mean, for all of us, who we allow to join our team, we get to choose that, right? As leaders, as someone, if you have any hiring authority at all, you get to choose who joins your team. And for part of my career, I really struggled with that because you would hire based on numbers and production, right? And you want to grow so bad that you just hire people. And then you allow people in. Well, if they are leaders, and in my role, I'm typically hiring leaders that are going to hire other leaders, and we're going to build out teams. If you hire one bad person or you allow one bad person into the team, meaning bad for your culture, right? They may fit somewhere else great.
Yes.
They're going to attract other people like that. So if they're willing to take shortcuts, if they're willing to do things that don't align with your culture, you have now allowed that culture that doesn't align to spread. And so I say number one is you got to attract, you've got to recruit, and you've got to hire the best people that align with your culture. Well, how do you know who they are? Get very clear on that targeted avatar. I know for me, I'm looking for people that are adaptable. From my sports background, highly coachable, because what I know is to be part of our culture is you need to be able to give and receive feedback. Because if you're a leader, you have people on your team that you need to give feedback to. Well, I can recognize very quickly if I'm sharing things with you and I'm talking to you, I can tell if you're coachable. If you're not coachable, you can't be part of the team. It's just not going to work. Because what's going to happen is you and I are going to have a conversation. I'm going to want to give you feedback about your performance or something I've seen to help you achieve a higher level. And if you're not willing to receive that, our relationship can never grow together. And you're going to think, wow, Brian's being hard on me. Brian doesn't care about me. All these things, when that's actually not true. My best coach in soccer was the hardest on me. 100%. Made us do somersaults on the pavement. If we were late, we had to run. If we didn't play well, like there were always consequences to things. And I remember he said something to me one day. He's like, Brian, I'm the hardest on the people that I see are the best and have the most potential. And so what I tell our team is, if I'm being hard on you, it's because I see something in you that's going to make you better. And so I would say for everybody, be very clear about who you want, but also be very clear about your culture, right? And in our group, we talk about things like all in, and your language is going to matter. And we talk about being innovative. And you said this earlier, Sabrina, is that, I tell everybody I'm okay with an error or mess up, right? There's some things that we just know, like compliance, legal, fraud, all that. Like, no, there's no black and white on that. Like, it's black and white. I mean, there's no gray area on that stuff. But there's some things like I want you to try things, right? Like I want you to go out to the market and think about different ways to retain a customer, to win a customer over. How do you deliver a better experience? Go be as innovative as you want, right? And tell us how we can do it better. What I've found is our team, they feel this sense of ownership. And the more you can do that, we even labeled ourselves like Team Loan Depot Region 9. Like the more you can create an identity with your team of this is who we are, because look, we're a large company, right? We're 12,000 people, but our group is about 250 people. So we have our own identity within the company and the identity that's there. And ask people, what do they love about working here? When people join, I want to know what their hopes and dreams are. Like, what do you want to accomplish? Because if I can help you accomplish that, because I know what they are, we're going to get there faster. And so I would say those are the things as a leader just to be mindful of. And you've got to understand if you are the leader leading that culture, you've got to be the one that leads it. Like actually do what you say, right? If returning phone calls is important, if returning messages is important, if following up and doing things when you say you're going to do them or whatever it might be, you've got to do that and model the behavior that you want. And what you'll find is that will start to drive the culture. The last piece of tactical advice I would give you is be willing to give away whatever implied or unapplied authority you have and allow people on your team to help influence the culture in a good way. Because here's what I recognize. Out of the 20 that are basically kind of directly in my care, they all bring unique gifts and talents and skills. Why would I not want to have them share what they are doing, right? And I think that's where when you start to realize it's not all about me. It's about a team and how do we move the ball down the field together. And that's where the power happens is there's no Brian moving it by myself. They know that they're part of this. I think that's where the ownership factor comes into play.
Yes, 100% with the ownership. You talked about coachability, and then you talked about disruption. And a lot of people, I if you can like dig into this a lot more, because a lot of people, you associate a disruptor with someone who just doesn't listen, who's not coachable. And how do you create a culture that is both disrupting and coachable?
Oh, that's a great one. So we actually were talking about this the other day. So I think disruptors are willing to do things different than they've been done in the past. We're willing to take risk and we're willing to fail because we know on the other side of that is a lesson and we can get better faster. Because if I sit on the sideline and I'm just waiting for the market to be perfect, if I'm waiting for it all just to exactly line up and the stars to align, it's not going to happen. So I look at a disruptor that we're very calculated about how we do things, but we're also very willing to do things different than other people. We're willing to be mocked. Like, quite honestly, we're still the underdogs. People laugh at us, whether it's the name or how we do business and just all these things. And they want to kind of poke fun at that. But what we see is we have a clear vision of what our customers are saying to us in the marketplace versus the old traditional way of the way things used to done. And just take the mortgage business. I can remember when I started and people brought in like stacks of paperwork, like physically came into the office and I would sit down and I would meet with them and we would do their mortgage application and we would come up with the best scenario for them. Well, today is basically 100% digital, right? Like think about people take pictures from their smartphone, they send in their documents. They don't want to come into the office with you. If you're not willing to adjust and change and embrace technology, but realize the secret sauce is people and technology coming together, then the customer experience will never move forward. And so I look at that piece of how do you take a disruptive culture with one that we say is highly competitive? And I think that's where the dominate piece came from. Is how do you disrupt and dominate? Is we want to do things so different than what everybody else is doing that you can recognize right away. Wow, if I go with Loan Depot and Brian's team, I'm getting all of these things. Very different. And then we said we wanted to dominate. I think that's the competitive side of we want to show the customer that not only are we going to wow them and win them over through this experience, but through that, we're always getting better. So when they want to come back or they need additional services, they're going to come to us. Like we're going to be their go-to person. And so we've just taken that stance of it's not transactional. It is 100% relational. And so we try to train those, our team members on like, what are the ways to do that so that we can move the ball down the field? And people look at it that way. Look, we're highly compliant in a world that we live in. We have to stay within some guardrails, but there are some that I want our team to think about coloring outside the box, right? And like, how do you do things outside of what everyone else is doing? Because if everybody's doing it one way, there would be no Apple, there would be no Tesla, right? Like these companies, if Blockbuster had continued, which we know how quickly Netflix put them out of business.
Yes.
They could have adapted, but they didn't, right? And so you think about those things and you go, wow, Netflix continues to adapt through this. Amazon, as they started just selling books and look at where they went. I look at that, that's creative disruption because they got very creative, but they disrupted industries that people are sitting back thinking, how did they do that? Well, it was very strategic, right? Over
Yeah.
time, they just took those calculated risks and they went a certain direction and they believed in where things were going and they weren't looking in the rearview mirror the entire time.
Right. And they really were open-minded. A lot of times in business, the longer someone is doing something, it's actually how our brain works, right? The more you fire off a certain pathway, it just gets more and more ingrained and it gets harder to create a new pathway. It doesn't mean it's not possible. It's just more challenging. So just keeping yourself aware of that is incredibly important. Now, I wanted to ask you about today. Today there is such an issue with people just leaving companies because they're always, they're thinking there's something better out there. I believe it's called the Great Resignation right now, where people are just the world is my oyster type of mentality, and I'm going to go find myself, and I'm going to go find a company that's going to suit my needs. And as you're building a team, it's the same thing in the insurance industry, very similar to the mortgage industry. We have to understand that this is the environment that we're in today. how do you create your culture to make sure that you are also thinking not just of disrupting, but of retention and keeping great players? I always say to our team, people are going to leave our business as long as we're retaining the good. We want people to leave our business, where we can't keep everyone. But we want the right people to leave and the right people to stay. How do you navigate through this, especially in today's world where people feel like anything is an option?
Yeah, look, our industry is known for just people leaving companies for the next best thing. And they typically look short term, and there's certain triggers for them that maybe it's technology or pricing or products or um, new title, they get promoted. And
Yes.
throughout our industry, I think what I've learned in 20 years is typically the people that move for any of those short term, they think are gains, the market usually self corrects itself and people catch up. And so, what I would say for anyone right now, that this great resignation is going to be interesting to watch because each industry seems like they're getting impacted differently. And so, for us, what I'm paying attention to is, are we providing an environment for people to constantly feel like they're supported and challenged? Because if I can provide that environment, that's my job. I can't control how everyone receives it, and I can't even control everyone's individual success, but I can be one of the biggest influencers in that. And that's the role that I've committed and accepted is, how do I just make sure I'm always giving them value? How do we continually put things in front of them that educate them and train them and help them get better? And I think what we're seeing right now is going to accelerate in the form of technology. You look at just the other day, I think it was Tesla and whoever it was bought thousands of cars from them and all these, and it was years
Oh,
ago. People
Hertz,
laughed.
yes,
Yeah,
and
Hertz.
Tesla.
You look at some of these things and you're like, okay, technology is accelerating at a fast rate. And we have to think about our team members today. What do they want? Because in 2020, if you had said, look, everybody's going to be working from home, maybe some people come back to the office later, some won't. We all have to realize that we've got some people that love working at home. They're more productive there, and that's better for them. We have some people that love working from home, not productive there. You have to figure out in your environment, where do people fit in? And I go back to, you have to have a vision and a mission for your team, right? And we've said from day one, we want to disrupt the industry and create a process that allows our customers to be owners in that. We're going to take them on a journey and an experience. And we believe home is everything. It's one of our taglines. And we've said, you know what, we're going to empower the customers with online tools in a way that they can be part of the process. It's going to make it user friendly. And then we're going to deliver this great product and the pricing and everything there so that they love it. That disruption is not for everyone, because there are people that have been in the business. The average age, I think, was like 55 in the mortgage industry recently. It's starting to drop a little. But if you don't want to use technology and you don't want to adapt with what's there, the reality is some companies are going to have great resignations. They don't have a firm culture typically. And if you were to ask the team, like, what is the culture? What is our mission? Where are we going? They don't know. And so as a leader, I would say just continually reshare, reshare, reshare. And you can never share that too much to let people know. And the more you can create that tribe that they're part of it, I think you start to limit the amount of exposure you have that's there. And for us, look, I'm looking very much forward thinking and letting people know, here's where we're going. I want you to be part of this. This is how you can grow your business. These are the opportunities coming. And I think for all of us, we've got to show up each day and be your best, because as a leader, people are watching. And if you're not excited about showing up every day, there is no way your team's going to show up and be like, yes, let's go. Like, not happening. So the things that we focus on are just the fundamentals, right? We're going to show up every day. We're going to put in hard work. We talk about it's going to be a battle, but we are going to win. And it doesn't matter what gets in our way. We collaborate, and that's how we win.
Yeah, I think that's so important for people to have this certainty. I can't stress this enough. Even when we live in an uncertain world, like your work, when there's commitment there and there's certainty, it allows people that freedom and that space to say, I can test out new things and, get better and better. The other thing you really talk about is being hungry, and being hungry with a hustle. I wanted to discuss this with you because I I really don't think there's an issue with people wanting to win. It's, are you able to back it up with what it takes to actually win? So how do you navigate through this? Because especially in the world with social media where everyone's just posting their wins, no one's out there saying like, you know, right now I'm in the worst state of mind ever. I am collapsing
Yeah.
and I have no makeup on and I really just want to put on jogging pants and not talk to anyone. So we're not posting that. We're posting with filters and making everything look as great as it possibly is. So the wanting is there in everyone because we live in such a visual world today. But how do we and how do you specifically enforce that you have to have a hustle inside of you? You have to want to do what it takes to win instead of just wanting it. Wanting it is not enough.
Yeah. Here's what I'd say, like competing at the highest levels and in our business, I would say, I mean, the rate we've grown from like 250 million to 2.5 billion in
Wow.
4 years. I mean, it's incredible growth. What I would say, most people haven't experienced winning enough to really understand that it's worth the price that you pay. And what I mean by
Yes.
that, one of my mentors, Ed Milet, shared this the other day, and he said, "You know what? Winning is more fun than fun is fun." And we broke that apart. And a lot of people want to have fun. I'm
Mhm.
all for fun. Let me tell you, winning is a hell of a lot more fun than just going out and having fun and taking shortcuts. And, oh, I skipped this workout. Oh, I didn't make those sales calls. Oh, I didn't follow up on this prospect. And, these cold leads over here now are super cold and I didn't do what's there. Let me tell you, that discipline in your life, and when you really start to experience winning, it is so addictive. You're going to understand that it is the small shifts and it's who you become, and there are no shortcuts to winning. I'll just tell you, winning will give you feedback every day. And I don't win every day, but there are parts of my day I win. And I share that with everybody is there's different ways to look at this, but you have to get your mind right around this is what are you playing for? What is the game? What are the rules? What is there? How are we measuring this? And for us, I've told our team, we are going to win, but we're going to define what winning looks like for us. And I've said it from day one is you're going to win at home and you're going to win at the office with us. This is what winning looks like. You're going to help define winning for you because for me, I've got a definition of what winning looks like and I'm highly driven and it's just in my competitive nature. It's one of those things like, I don't care what we're competing in. Like I'm going to give it my best. If I fall apart and I fall down, so what? That's happened to me several times in my career. You get back up. And that's going to separate the true winners is when you get knocked down and all the chips are against you and you don't have anything really in your mind that you think you're playing for. I don't understand how people don't have motivation in this area because I've got 3 kids and my wife and a legacy and a team and all this stuff. Like anytime I'm feeling sorry for myself, I'm like, they need the best Brian. Like step up, show up, go out there and go win. And winning becomes an attitude that I'm telling you, it's contagious. Once you're there, it is pretty relentless in this aspect. And I'll kind of give Tim Grover a credit for this. I've gone through his book, Relentless, and he just published Winning, 2 great books on this topic. That when you truly understand winning and the psychology of winning it's not always easy. But man, I'm gonna tell you what, putting in that extra work that other people are not willing to do gives you a confidence and gives you a swagger about, I know I can outwork people, not just in the effort, but in the intelligence of it. Because in 20 years, I've done so many things wrong and been around great mentors that now I know how to win and I know how to help our team win. And that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, tying this all together, I think when people talk and hear about winning, they think, well, you become untouchable and nothing can hurt you and nothing can harm you. It's crazy, Brian. My experience of winning is that whenever I'm in this like place where I'm winning at a high level, I find the enemy coming at me more than ever before. And the first time I got a whiff of this, I'm like, what is happening right now? I thought like winning was going to be like, nothing can touch me. I'm just like Teflon. And it just wasn't so. And so sometimes I prepare my team to know that when you're in this place of high performing and you're winning and doing your well, armor yourself because the energy and the enemy, it's coming for you. So what could you say in terms of just giving wisdom? I'm a big proponent of, you know, learning through other people's experiences so that, you can apply that wisdom to yourself so you can see it coming before it comes and be like, I've seen this before, you know, and it comes when you're winning.
Yeah. Well, I think why that is, if you look at the psychology, and my dad's a psychologist, so I tell her I have an unfair advantage of like, I understand psychology at a deep, deep level. And what I've realized is even for myself, when we're winning, we almost always, I will say 99%, it feels like we move into a little bit of that comfort gear. We're like, I'm winning. I've accomplished the goal, like true winning. The reality is winning doesn't care. Like when you show up tomorrow, if you won today, you got to win tomorrow. Like winning does not carry over. It's not something that you go, wow, and just take baseball World Series. Had a great game last night. That does not carry over to the next game. It is a new game. It starts at 0-0. And we say that at the end of our month. I say it at the end of every day. And the wisdom I would share with everybody is it's never as good as you think it can get, meaning it can always be better. You can always dream bigger. You can always think bigger and make a bigger impact on people around you that you care about in your team. And also on the low side, like I've had some major lows where like living off credit cards and like lost my job and gotten fired and all this stuff. And you're like, man, this is like the low of the lows. Well, I didn't die.
Right.
You know, I didn't have like the ultimate pain there. And you're going, okay, it's never as low as we think. And really for each of us, you're going to need to build this like a muscle. And some of my best mentors, that's what I would take away is it is about who you're becoming. And until you're ready to do the inside work, like inside of here and inside of your brain, you will always be stuck in these patterns and you will have this almost like habit loop of for you to move forward and do something different, you have to do different things, right? It's the old saying of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. In life, if you want change in your life in any area, you're going to need to do things differently and to do different things. Those are two very different things, by the way. So you want to look at that and you want to figure out with an honest assessment where you are and where you want to be. And what I've done is this exercise of what is the gap? What's holding me back? You don't know what it is every time?
What is it?
Me.
Yes.
100%. So guess what? Quit looking outside at social media. Quit looking for other people to give you this silver bullet, the answer, and all of that. It's in me. I know exactly what I need to do next before anyone else. I know everything about what I've done or not done. I know everything about my hopes and my dreams, right? Like I know them intimately more than anyone. So why would I think someone else could come along? I love mentors. I love coaches. I'm not saying that at all because I think they're immensely helpful. But man, start with you. Like get yourself right and put the work in and invest actual money in yourself. And if you're like, Brian, I got no money, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, guess what? Like I had that same situation, put it on a credit card and I got coaching. Like at some point you got to eliminate the excuses and say, I'm going all in, which means paying a sacrifice, investing in coaching or mentoring, doing things, going to a conference that you need to go to, finding out a way that you can intentionally do things different is going to require you to make different choices. So start there and watch how those will stack up. And I can tell you my own experience. Like I've hit lows several times, not only in sports, but in my business career. Each one of those lows provided me lessons that I could have never learned had I continued just to been average and winning in those areas. Sometimes you got to get knocked down to realize actually how tough you are and to get back up and get in the game. And your family deserves it. Your friends deserve it. Most importantly, you deserve it. So take ownership, get in the game, and put your best effort forward. Because I will tell you, in life, there are no do-overs. I've realized this one very clearly. And I want to live a life of no regrets.
Right. And I think it's just, it's so nice and refreshing to speak to someone who is, doing well in their business and their family, and I know fitness is such an incredibly important thing for yourself. Like, why is the role of fitness so important for your overall success, especially for a lot of us in business? When I came into the business world, I put on so much weight because I was just working as hard as I could, eating whatever I wanted. And when you're young, you think like, oh, no, my metabolism is good, but that eventually creeps up on you. So what would you say, like in terms of people that are, starting in business and why your health is, tied into your wealth? It's really intertwined into it.
It is. You know, this is a lesson I wish I'd learned earlier in life, but there is an absolute correlation. As much as people want to deny this, your confidence comes from you doing things consistently that challenge you, right? And I think about for me, I enjoy working out because every workout's going to push me and challenge me. When I give effort, it gives me feedback. Okay, Brian, you're good here, but you need to work here. Okay, you got tired here. How do you improve? And every workout will give you feedback. When I'm working out, I'm more confident. I have more energy. I can go into meetings. I can go into, anything that I have prepared for the day, and I'm a better version of myself. And for me, it stemmed when I was 14. I was playing AAU basketball. I played basketball and soccer. And I'll never forget my coach at the time was also our pediatrician. So I go in. Short version of the story is I'm highly overweight. My cholesterol is way out of whack. My blood pressure is jacked up. Like I am basically headed towards what he says is like the kid version. Like I'm going to get, diabetes and heart issues and all this stuff. And I'll never forget one of my coaches that was the closest to me. He would kind of joke around and he knew he could do this to get a response, but he would kind of joke about my weight and, pizza boy and this kind of stuff. And some people probably listen to that. They're like, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. You know what? We're not soft. I needed somebody in my life to say something honestly to me, to shift me. So that was a moment in my life that I look back that I ended up losing over 30 pounds, right? So I'm basically, teenager. I'm going through all this other stuff. And I remember wearing 2 shirts, covering up and all this stuff. And I'm still a good athlete. But guess what? I wasn't great. The difference between me going from good to great and eventually making the Olympic team pool and making the national team, going to play college and professional, I got my health in order. I realized what healthy eating was, what actually working out did for my brain and my body. And when I encountered that again with our first 2 kids, I started to put on some weight. I'm traveling and all that stuff. I remember I was like, you know what, Brian, you got to get back in. And I was able to put myself back into that, like, you got to go. And it doesn't mean that I've got it all figured out, but I do know the secret is I've got to make daily choices and I've got to be committed. And working out isn't just something I do. It's who I am. People know me for that now. And they're like, man, you always work out all the time. I'm like, it's just who I am, man. Like I enjoy it now. I enjoy that pain and suffering in the workout that I know that I could quit. Part of me wants to quit and I didn't. So I won. I'm moving into the day and I'm more unstoppable than I was before. So I think that correlation, and for everybody, we've probably got stories that connect like that. And for me, I'm not going back to that kid that was headed down a very unhealthy path. And I don't want to be that example for my kids. So that's one of my motivators now is they're watching their dad.
I love this. In closing, I would just really want for you to share like what makes Brian unique to this world. I believe that, God created all of us with something inside. And, when you are able to express what's uniquely inside of you, you've fulfilled a deeper role. So, if Brian were to leave planet Earth, what would the Earth miss about Brian?
What I've heard people say, and I've recognized this about myself is I help other people feel good about themselves. And it's through energy. It's through positive affirmations you share with people. It's being kind to people. It's showing up every day for people. It's being there in the hard times. But I think that's what, if you were to meet me, you would realize I smile a lot. I joke a lot, but I'm also really serious. I like to compete a lot. And what you get with me, whether you're in the gym, at church, in a boardroom, podcast, wherever it is, you get the same Brian. And what I want to do is inspire and motivate people and leave them better than they were. And I recognize I may be the one person in each individual's day, that day, even for us. I might be the only person that goes, Sabrina, you're crushing it. I love this. This was a great time together. Great questions. You were really well prepared. And I leave you feeling better than before we chatted and before we were together.
I love that. And I can feel that genuinely and sincerely from you. So thank you for being a real person on planet Earth who really does care about, leaving a mark better, leaving the world better than, if there were no Brian. So thank you so much for your time today. So many great nuggets in there. And, just for people to go back and to dissect all of that and to really just apply it to our lives. So we don't have to be perfect where we are right now, but we're doing the work and we're marching towards that. So thank you so much for your time today, Brian. Thank you.
Awesome. It was an honor.